This is the Keychron Q1 mechanical keyboard. It was sent to me for free by Keychron. They didn't pay me though. Alright, so first thing first. The Keychron Q1 is a custom mechanical keyboard available for $169 for the full set, which includes the keyboard case, the PCB, the aluminum plate, the keycaps, and Gateron Phantom switches, and also a coiled cable. It is $149 for the bare bones set, which doesn't include the switches or the keycaps. This is a 75% keyboard, so you can get the arrow keys, the F key row, and the other buttons that you can get on a 10 keyless keyboard. Though personally, I don't really like using 75% keyboards because I prefer keyboards that are smaller and more compact. Though I believe Keychron does different runs of their keyboards in different sizes. And yeah, they actually have a 65% version called the Q2 coming out soon. But basically, if you're someone who needs the F key row, this keyboard is for you. It's QMK and VIA compatible, which is great. This is a gasket mounted keyboard, which means that the PCB and plate is sandwiched in the keyboard case by these gaskets. This means that it's not screwed into the case at all, it's just held there. Gasket mounted keyboards sound a bit different from other mounting styles because the gasket isolates the plate and PCB from direct contact with the case. And they have this flex going on when you press down hard on it, which means a softer typing experience. In general, when you get this keyboard, you get an aluminium plate, although you can get other plate types separately on their website. It kinda sucks that you can't choose which plate option you want from the get-go though. This keyboard supports both Mac and Windows. You can toggle between the modes on the slider next to the USB port. It is also a hot swappable keyboard, so you can change switches easily if you wanted to. This uses south-facing switches, so you don't need to worry about keycap interference when you use the keycaps. It's pretty neat, I think. The Q1 is available in 3 colors: carbon black, space grey, and navy blue. I got grey, though it looks more like a silver than a grey. It's quite reflective. And to be honest, the color scheme of the grey keycaps on the keyboard looks pretty doesn't look that good. This keyboard is the exploded kind of 75% keyboard, so this means there are gaps and spacings between the key clusters, which is a good thing. I really like that, because I think other compact 75% keyboards like the KBD 75 looks really bad. Like a waffle iron. The keycaps are ABS. They're pretty smooth and pretty thin. The quality isn't that great, but for $20, I think they're a decent add-on with the Phantom switches. The full set version of this keyboard is definitely for those who just want to have an entire keyboard without changing too much on it, because money. I mean, the keyboard is already pretty expensive for people who aren't into custom keyboards in the first place. The keyboard's black plate actually looks really cool. Like, without any keycaps and switches on, it looks sick as hell. No lie. This keyboard has RGB, although the RGB lighting is really dim. It's really unsatisfying to look at. Part of it is because the LED is shining through the colored top housing of the brown switches, but even then, it's not a very bright light. Since these are south-facing switches, don't expect the LEDs to shine through those gamer shine-through keycaps very well. For me, I would never have the LEDs turned on, but I think they're great if you're doing that all-white keycap set and have the LEDs set to a single color. Would make a pretty nice subtle accent glow under all the keys. And that's about it for the looks of the keyboard. I think most people already know how hollow and pingy the stock Q1 keyboard sounds like. So yeah, here's an extra sound test for you guys. The ping is really bad. Like, really bad. The pinging on the keyboard gets the worst at the furthest right corners of the keyboard. It's especially bad at the backspace. Like, just hear it. Yikes. The stock factory looped Gateron screw-in stabilizers are pretty decent. They come pre-looped and pre-clipped and they're okay, I guess. They're not perfect, but definitely better than the stabilizers from other pre-built keyboards. But they're also not as good as what you get from a Vamilo keyboard. I threw in linear switches at the stabilizer keys and did a test, and while they're not rattling, they do tick. Though in the end, the ping and the ticking stabilizers aren't the end of the world, since they can be fixed. But before we start modding the keyboard, let's talk about the Gateron Phantom switches that come along with it. There are 3 options: Phantom Red, Phantom Brown, and Phantom Blue. The linears, tactile, and clicky switch. The board they sent me was full of Phantom Browns, but they also gave me 35 of the other 2 switches to try. They are factory looped except for the Phantom Blue. That one isn't looped at all. As for smoothness, not the smoothest thing I have ever touched, but they're alright. Though sound-wise, they could use a little more manual looping to get a nicer sound. And I think that Gateron Yellows are a better choice as a starter budget switch than these. But I still think these are just fine for people who are touching custom mechanical keyboards for the first time. Because for $20 add-on for these with keycaps, I mean, why not? I probably should have re-looped these switches for the modded sound tests, but I didn't. So, sorry about that. Anyway, that's about it for the keyboard stock. Time to mod the board. I decided to go with the default keycaps and stabilizers because I entered this review with the mindset of someone who doesn't own a lot of custom keyboard stuff. And since everyone has already reviewed this keyboard, I figured my review isn't really adding anything new, so I decided to do this massive sound test comparison. So for the switches, I decided to just keep going with the default Phantom red switches and the Phantom brown switches. I also got some Gateron Yellow Pros to test the board with. These Yellow Pros are factory looped really well. I kind of use this as a baseline sound for any keyboard builds I make. Then I also got some banana split switches because, I don't know, they're pretty popular right now and I just wanted to know if they really did sound like they did on those YouTube sound tests. I decided to also throw in some Gateron Ink Black V2s as well, since they are the switch I use in my main boards. Just want to hear how it sound like. I don't have any tactile switches in my house right now, so I bought some Boba U4Ts. These are pretty popular right now as well. The packaging these came in actually labeled these as Boba U4T Toki switch, which I thought was pretty funny because haha, Toki meme buzzword, until I actually tried them. Holy shit. I wish I had a higher pitch tactile switch to use too, but my budget for this video is already pretty high that I think I'm only going to break even in terms of revenue, so I'm sorry. They have two layers of case foam. The bottom foam is glued to the case. I have no idea why they did this. So to deal with the ping and hollowness of the board, I decided to replace the case foam. I replaced it with Sobotane. Sobotane is pretty darn overpowered for sound isolation. I don't really use it for keyboards normally, unless they are really hollow. After that, following keyboards tutorial, super underrated channel by the way, you should watch him, I added some masking tape next to the screw points on the top casing. Did it remove the ping? Yep. Man, it's like magic. Next up was the stabilizers. I decided to holy mod them. As for what the holy mod is and how to do it, I recommend watching Hamaji Neo's video on it. After that, we just put the keyboard back together and we're done. When the Q1 is modded and the ping gotten rid of, it's actually really quiet. Like, it's a really quiet keyboard. It's quiet and it maintains this kind of high-pitched, shallow sound. Alright, so earlier I said that I was going to do a massive sound test comparison between the switches and configurations. And yeah, I did them. It took 9 hours. But there was one thing I realized while doing all these sound comparisons is that, well, the switches kind of sound the same. Like, there's a 2% difference. And most of the difference is actually the sound of the spacebar. Though the most obvious sound difference was when using the Boba U4Ts, which were noticeably lower pitched than everything else. So yeah, basically, if you're a beginner starting out in the hobby and you're wondering whether you should go for cheaper switches or more expensive switches like Gateron Yellows versus Gateron Ink Blacks, I'd say go for the Yellows if you want to save money, and this is the only board that you're going to use and keep, because they sound almost exactly the same on this keyboard. Of course, however, when it comes to the sound of this keyboard, you can still use other mods to change how it sounds like, which is doing the tape mod or adding PE foam. So I decided to try using the tape mod without the PE foam first. I tried using a different number of layers and recording my findings, and I found out that the layers don't really change how the keyboard sounds so much until the 4th layer or so. At around 4 layers, right, the sound does get like slightly bit deeper, but it's a very small difference from without the tape mod at all. Then it was time to use the PE foam. PE foam changes how keyboards sound a lot. In this case, it made the keyboard sound a lot less muted. It was louder, deeper, and poppier, which is a thing that PE foam does to a lot of keyboards actually. It sounds good, but to be honest, every PE foam keyboard sounds good. When it comes to it, it's mostly preference on whether you want to use this PE foam or not. Because the thing about PE foam is that it can make keyboards sound the same. And the other thing about PE foam is that they make switches sound the same. But the interesting thing is that the original keyboard just modded, right? The switches sounded really similar. But with the PE foam, you could actually hear the difference between each switch. Okay, after just trying P foam on it, I decided to also use the tape mod on top of the P foam, and the difference is also a lot more noticeable here. It got noticeably deeper. So in the end, when it comes to sound on this keyboard, just know that when you buy this keyboard, you're basically getting like one sound, unless you P-foam it. But then when you P-foam it, you get the P-foam sound. So it's just something to note on keyboards. Anyway, that's basically it for the sound of the keyboard. Without P-foam, it basically sounds like what it is, an entry budget custom keyboard. But as much as I say all these things about the sound, most of the appeal of keyboards in the first place is the functionality. Sure, you could take the money to buy this keyboard to build any other kind of budget keyboards out there, but it's hard to find a 75% that doesn't look like this and isn't a group buy keyboard and is also QMK and VIA supported, that isn't from Glorious. In conclusion, this is a great keyboard to get for beginners who need this kind of layout and functionality. The sound is really good enough and it is very, very beginner friendly to mod. Honestly, for $150 to $170, this is pretty worth it actually. Honestly, go for it if you want it. As for the full sound test comparisons that I did, it'll be linked in the description. And if you like this kind of custom keyboard review videos from me, don't like and subscribe. I never want to do this ever again.